Hey, what's up everyone? Back here with another comic book review. I've got the Uncanny X-Men issue 391. This comic was published back in 2001 in the days when Joe Quesada was the editor-in-chief. Now this was a great comic. First thing that drew me to it was this cover that's expertly drawn by Tom Rainey. And you know, I'm a big old Cyclops fan. I didn't have to look into it. I just got it just based on that. And it totally didn't disappoint. Ever since I was a little kid and I first got into the X-Men watching the old 90s cartoon like everyone else, you know, ever since then, Cyclops, hands down, my favorite X-Man to this day. And it doesn't disappoint. It's Cyclops all the way, every page. And it's a great comic. So it's written to absolute perfection by Scott Lobdell, the legendary Scott Lobdell, who got really famous in this time period writing X-Men stories. But you know what? I haven't really gotten into him till lately, and you know, I'm one gust of wind away from picking up that Flash Forward series he wrote for DC a couple years ago. That I hear was a really great Wally West story, and the inside art by this is by Salvador Larroca, who I really got into when he did when Marvel got back the publishing rights to Star Wars and the initial Darth Vader run written by Kieron Gillen. Larroca did the art, all 25 issues, that entire run. I was like, wow, he's really great. But a lot of times when I pick up a dollar comic, you know, it comes from the dollar boxes from the late 90s or early 2000s. A lot of times it turns out to be early Louis Larroca, Salvador Larroca, sorry. And I'm like, wow, I really like his art style back then. I really like it. It's really good. And so it's going to be a spoiler review, so I hope you read it when it came out 20 years ago. So here we go. Cyclops is riding in on his goofy X-Men motorcycle, and you know, I'm not familiar with this look. Even the visor there, it's very reminiscent of the first X-Men movie with James Marsden playing Cyclops, which I actually just rewatched that movie with my wife, and it was really good. I was like, wow, I was surprised. So even the dark costume, I thought, wow, maybe they were trying to replicate the look in the movie, because that movie coming out was a big deal. It was very exciting. And so he's kind of reflecting. He's taking time away from the X-Men, going to someplace peaceful. He just lost his friend and comrade Colossus, as he was a victim of the Legacy virus, and has got some lot of good character kind of thought bubbles going on. Taps a button on his wristband. Oh look, even there's an ad for the X-Men movie. How you like that slogan right there? Trust a few, fear the rest, own it all. DVD and VHS. That's funny. It's a funny ad. But anyway, so he calls upon his father, Corsair, Christopher Summers. He's a swashbuckling space pirate, leader of the Starjammers. He rides out on his own goofy space motorcycle. And right off the bat, they meet each other in the forest, and he goes, should we like hug or something? And Scott says, not if you don't want to. And then it's just a panel of silence, and he's like, I'm starved, let's eat. So right off the bat, you're feeling this tension of awkwardness, and let me tell you, that ain't gonna go away. So gets into this. They're trying to make up for lost time. There's this scene I really love, one of my favorite parts in this comic, of them fishing in the pond, and Corsair shares a story of him with the Starjammers and on an aquatic planet going fishing for some food, and they get attacked by these giant monster alien fish. And he tells a pretty dumb joke, a dad joke, if you will, and he thinks it's the funniest thing, but Scott's not amused at all, and he gives him the old, oh, well, you had to be there, and he's like, yep, guess so, and then just back to silence, sitting in the boat. Couldn't be more awkward. I love that for two main reasons. I interpret it like this. Number one, Scott's not laughing at this story because he's Cyclops. He experiences things that crazy or more every other day. You know, and number two, Corsair is probably really used to just being surrounded by the Starjammers, who indulge him by laughing at his stories regardless of if they're funny or not, because they are his friends / co-workers. So it's a bit of a dynamic for both of them now. Goes into setting up the tent, and Corsair's putting up some firewood, and he says, hey, blast it with your heat vision. And that seems to be a thing that keeps popping up. Apparently some people don't know that his optic blasts isn't actually heat vision, but it keeps popping up in my life for some reason lately. And so I was like, wow, people didn't know that, but apparently Corsair didn't know that, and he's his father. So Scott says, my eyes don't give off heat vision, Dad. You know, it's concussive energy. It has nothing to do with heat. And he goes, oh, sorry. So it's just, he kind of pisses him off more, and he's like, he says, you realize I know more about Chambers' psi-centric bioblast mutant ability than you know about your own son. And so the frustration is starting to boil up. You can tell they both have things they want to say to each other that they can't just bring themselves to off the bat. And so even here he just makes it worse by saying, hey, the view's amazing. Those reds are amazing. And he taps on his ruby quartz glasses and says, yeah, well, everything is red to me, Dad, you know, with my heat vision and all. And but then they kind of start bringing out their emotions, their thoughts that they're thinking about. And Scott starts yelling at him about how why didn't you ever come back for me and Alex when you knew that we were alive, that we survived the plane crash. His dialogue here says, what about your responsibility to your sons? My last memory of you was your back as you struggled with the controls of the plane. Wear the damned parachute, you shouted, and get off the plane now. Didn't it occur to you, and all the time you were swashbuckling from one side of the galaxy to the next, that your sons believed you were dead? Didn't it bother you that we thought we were orphans? And so that's pretty intense stuff, like really raw emotion. Scott Lobdell's really good at this. And Corsair brings up about that him and Scott's mother survived the plane crash because they were teleported away in the last minute before the crash. And learn all about that in the Dark Phoenix, type stories. I feel like I just covered this kind of stuff in issues 1 and 2 of the recent X-Men Legends series. It's great stuff, by the way. Go check those out. And Scott just gets pissed even more. He says, don't use my mom as an excuse, basically. And it's like, well, what do you want me to say? And he's like, I don't think you ever cared about us in the first place. And then Corsair backhands him. He bitch slaps Cyclops in the face. And that's pretty intense. And then but then we turn back to Corsair, and he's crying. In his own shame, he's weeping. And he says that's why he never came back. So yeah, not a great dad, but obviously he still has a heart. He says right here, you have to understand, Scott, I couldn't do anything to save you and Alex short of pitching you out of an airplane. There wasn't a day that went by when I didn't think you were better off without me. It might not have been the right thing, Scott, but I spent the rest of my life trying to protect an entire universe to make up for not being able to protect my own family. And I was like, wow, that adds an entirely new layer to this character that I never thought about. But that's the reason he does what he does. That's why he formed a band of pirates in space that usually lean toward the side of good. But it's because he's ashamed he can't return to Earth, and he failed to protect the one thing that mattered most to him. It's something I never thought of. It's really cool, really great stuff. And now that they got out the things that they wanted to say to each other, now that things can kind of stop being weird between them, and they can have real human emotions with each other and respond likewise to each other. There's this shot right here. Man, the moon is never that big. Oh my gosh. It doesn't bother me as much as when I'm watching a TV show and the moon is this big. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's insane. But in a comic, I'll give the moon being that big a pass, especially if I'm reading a Moon Knight comic. But then these two alpha males here, they say I love you in their own kind of way without having to say it, but still saying it. It's really good, relatable writing. It's good stuff. Final page right here ends on this touching note of Cyclops remembering that was the last night before the plane crash, was Scott falling asleep in his father's arms while they were just talking, and that's what they did again this night. So they're building back, they're breaking down walls basically, and becoming and bonding like they want to, now that they can start acting like real people instead of forcing what they believe a father-son relationship is supposed to be. They can start acting like how they want to. So really great writing. I loved it. It was a fantastic book. Virtually no action, and that's how you know I love it. I'm critical of comics that don't have any action in it, so you know this is good, since I'm still recommending this. So this is a lesson to all of you, why you never pass up the dollar box whenever you see them. You might find a gem like this. You might find something written by Scott Lobdell. Yeah, Larroca's art was really good in this, but and usually I always lean first towards championing the artist over the writer, since this is a visual medium. But you know what? I gotta give full props to Scott Lobdell for this one. This was him just doing expert writing all the way. And so yeah, don't pass up the dollar box. You might fight something like this. You know, I listened to a interview with Scott Lobdell, and he was asked about what he thinks about decompressed storytelling, and he said, I think it's crap. And then he chuckles and he's like, oh yeah, I'm just kidding. And he was like, no, but seriously, it's crap. And he says he understands keeping the story going, but basically if you don't tell a concise story in an issue, then they're not getting their money's worth. And I think this was a perfect embodiment of what he is saying, because I jumped into this totally vanilla, not reading the things surrounding it, and just enjoyed this for what it was worth. Concise story all about Cyclops and his dad, and his issues with his dad, and I just loved it. You know, really great story too, and the fact that it doesn't bash fathers. For some reason, that's the fashionable thing to do in comic books these days, that all dads in comics have to be a deadbeat dad. Not this one. Corsair is not the greatest dad, but he's still a good person, and it was really great stuff. This has got to be my favorite just straight up Cyclops issue since the, what was that, an Uncanny X-Men annual a couple of years ago, that with fantastic Carlos Gomez interior art and really well written by Ed Brisson, that had the double task of kind of telling Cyclops' story from coming back from being dead, and also displaying Cyclops not just as an X-Man but as a superhero, because that is what he is. He is not only my favorite X-Man, he is one of my all-time favorite superheroes, hands down. So I'm always eager to read a great Cyclops-centric comic, and this and that Ed Brisson, Carlos Gomez comic is definitely two of my favorite Cyclops comics now. So yes, definitely go read comics. Go down to your comic store. If the stuff that they publish now doesn't really do it for you, then go get the old stuff, because this is great. Far better than manga. You can read manga if you want to, but you know what? West is the best. I know that it's all a visual medium. Manga is a different it's a different form of the visual medium, but with storytelling and these characters, you know what we got over here? We've got Scott Lobdell and Cyclops. So that is why, you know, we got to go and keep reading X-Men. It was great stuff. Loved this comic. Highly recommend it if you can find it. So thank you very much for checking out this video. Comment below. Tell me if you actually prefer manga over this awesome stuff right here. Tell me who your favorite X-Men is, and let me know what you want me to review next. Thank you for watching. Bye.